I'll probably get, someone will probably call me and say, you can't use that music at some point. But if anyone out there for, guys that are old like me and Eric and Frank, 55 years ago today, when the National Guards opened fire at Kent State. I was just thinking about that this morning, so figured we'd pay tribute as we started today. Great song. They don't do protest songs like they used to be. Anyway.
You know how to set the tone, JC.
Welcome, guys. Welcome back, as you know, out there in podcast land. This is Capitalism Remix. I'm Jeff Cherry. I'm your host. And today, I'm really thrilled that I got two dear friends, two portfolio company managers, and just two of my favorite people joining us today. Eric Harr, Frank DiCrisi, the leaders of MAXIOM, which is one of our portfolio companies. We're going to talk about MAXIOM in a little bit, but Eric, I'm going to start with you, I think. I would love to I want to talk a little bit about how the three of us met. Mm-hmm. I'm not actually sure how you and Frank met. I think I know the story. But part of the story about how you and I met was I saw Ibrahim al-Husseini at a Christmas party, and he had a really, really dope smoking jacket on. I went to talk to him about his jacket, and then he started talking to me about, conscious capitalism, and he knew Raj Sisodia, who's been on the podcast, obviously. And then he started talking to me about this idea about doing an accelerator at the Vatican. And I think that when he said, I'm working on this project of doing an accelerator at the Vatican, I think that's when I said, I need another drink at this because I thought, this guy's full of shit, whatever. And then I kept having discussions with him. And then he said, well, why don't you do a call with the guy who's leading this whole thing? His name's Eric Harr. I said, oh, yeah, sure, I'll do a call with him. I'll do a call with just about anybody. And I remember that call like it was yesterday. I was sitting in my apartment in Mount Vernon here in Baltimore on the 22nd floor looking out at Johns Hopkins and having that conversation. And a lot of people have heard that story about how you and I met, but I'm not sure if I know the actual the sort of backstory to how you ended up being at the pinnacle of that event or thinking about that idea. I'd love to talk about that a little bit, and then we'll get into you and Frank and yeah.
Well, I know that smoking jacket, and I'm still gonna get it. I'm committed to getting that jacket. So, JC, thank you so much for having us on today, and it's always a pleasure and honor to be with you, brother. I suppose the two words that encapsulate how I got to the Vatican and to these relationships is the late Holy Father would call it divine choreography. It's the only explanation for how I found my way to the Vatican to talk about the future of capitalism. And it was actually, our family was invited to a summit presided over our good friend Cardinal Turkson, who came together with the thesis that if you convene leaders from the public sector, private sector, faith sector, and academic sector, the four legs of the stool, you can sustainably address the grand challenges of our time. And in its 1600-year history, they had never really talked much about this. Capitalism was always the enemy. Yet here was a holy see, progressive enough to think, maybe money's not the root of all evil. Maybe we can work together to co-create solutions. And we were invited to the Vatican. My lovely daughter gave a speech. She had started a lemonade stand to end child slavery. So I got to watch my 9-year-old give a keynote at the Vatican. And that's how I came to meet you, Jeff. And I'll never forget what you said at one of the first summits, which was Capitalism's lost its way. And this is the group then that can help find its way back. And that really stuck with me.
Yeah. But I'm still. So what was Cardinal Turkson's? How did he know about you? How did he know to invite you? Was it Alexandra? Was it the lemonade stand that first got their attention, or?
Yeah, if I'm being honest, it's probably my wife and daughter got me in there, and I rode the coattails of. I was the plus one of my 9-year-old. I mean, Jeff Vivian started a lemonade stand. It gained worldwide fame, and she showed what one person can do if they care enough, right? She did this lemonade stand every single day, and on day 52, the New York Times broke the story, and it became this worldwide sensation of what you can do if you care enough. And Cardinal Turkson heard that story and invited us to the Vatican, and the rest is history.
And then, so you were riding her coattails.
Yes,
and then,
sir.
And then you took over.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And it was Cardinal Turkson and the friendship we developed of what's possible here.
Yeah.
What can we do together when you bring Silicon Valley together with the Vatican? What's possible?
And so, Frank, how did you come into this to that universe? I remember, I think the first time I met you, it might have been
18.
Maybe 18. It was when I got. I hate to say this on the podcast, but when I got the award.
Well, no, I was sitting
Oh,
next
yes.
to you. I was sitting next to you.
Yeah.
And the funny part is, I think I may have told you the story, but no reason for you to remember it. But my brother-in-law's name is Jeff Cherry.
Right.
And so I walk in and I see, where I'm sitting, and right next to me is Jeff Cherry. And I'm looking around going, what are you talking about? And this comes up routinely because you sent me a message the other day, and I was with them, and I'm sitting next to him, and he's like, what is that? I didn't send you that message. I'm like, no. So it's just this funny thing. But yeah, that was 2018. But in the end of 17, we were at a Forbes Impact event that Brandon was running, and Father Philip Leray was there, and everybody's going around doing their thing, and as people are, we're going to make a ton of money, we're going to make a ton of money, we're going to make money. And what we were doing was working with the underbanked, the refugee, the asylum seeker who's displaced, and the archaic and arcane way that money follows them, or even Catholic Charities or the UN helps them get money. And we were helping solve some of those solutions and talking about uplifting humanity. And Father Philip's like, whoa, wait, what? We need to talk to you. And so he came over and put Eric on the phone. And from there, we ended up at the Humanity 2.0 event and a Laudato Si Challenge event. And from there, I told Eric, he doesn't even remember this, but we shared a cab in 2018. And I said, look, just so you know, I'm like a bad penny. We're going to be working together. And I would tell him that every 6 months, every year. And yeah. And true to be form, I wouldn't go away. And we started working together and supporting the things that he was doing until we finally just joined forces. But it went back to this chance meeting with Father Philip, who, if we get to it, we'll talk about some of the great things we're doing with him still to this day. And he put Eric on the phone, and it was just, as Eric said, divine choreography.
So you brought up Brendan Doherty, who's a good friend of ours who used to run Forbes Impact. In fact, I owe Brendan a note because he sent me a note for my birthday last week. But so how did you know Father Philip?
He was at the event. Brendan had invited us and Father Philip.
Okay.
Because Father Philip, he was there for the Humanity 2.0 energy, and we were there for the work we were doing. And we were really the only two groups that really could relate to each other from a human flourishing standpoint.
When you say we, Frank, who are you talking about?
These are some partners I was working with in the payments and the financial space. These are some folks that I've been working with since 2005, and it's a fairly straightforward endeavor. But when you get deep into the way money flows for people and how hard it can be for people who don't have means. You know, we all pull out a debit card and it's like nothing. But for some people, that is a monumental thing. You mean I can pull out a debit card? It doesn't have to be cash. I can do X, Y, and Z with it. And, you know, back then the UN was handing out cash and a clipboard. And, you know, that's just rife with all sorts of thievery and these sorts of things. And so we were just trying to help streamline it and give some people some dignity and agency and that sort of thing. So that's what we were doing before Eric and I joined forces.
Still a lot of people trying to solve that problem
100%.
right now. We've seen probably in the Conscious Venture Lab, we've probably seen at least one company trying to solve that money exchange problem for emerging markets and underserved countries around the world in the last, I would say, 3 or 4 cohorts. There's one in the cohort we have now, and there was one in the last one. And I think it's interesting because the thing that they find that it's often difficult, and we're going to talk about this with respect to MAXIOM in a little bit too. But the thing that's often difficult for entrepreneurs is that when they're living in the future they want to see, and they understand, the sort of implications of that. But depending on who they're talking to, we have, these entrepreneurs that come from Africa and they're coming to Baltimore and they're talking to U.S. investors, and they can't they have to pull apart this idea that everything doesn't work like it works here in the United States.
Right.
Because someone will say, I want to build this thing, it's a money exchange. Someone says, I don't need that, I have Zelle. I have my own debit card. Why would anyone need that, right? And they're so tied into, we say, you're in the can, so you can't, you're in the bottle, so you can't see the label, that they can't understand how we don't understand. And we're always like, that's your job to explain it to investors about, what the future you're trying to see. Anyway, well, let me put that aside for a second. We'll get back into that when we talk about MAXIOM. But Eric, talk a little bit about your background, not the whole Vatican thing, but sort of, your upbringing, sort of how you got from the beginnings. I know a little bit about your mom to where you are today. So talk a little bit about that. I want to, have people understand, sort of where you came from, the other businesses you've built, that sort of thing, because it's important as we get to talk about how you're doing it differently.
Well, I will get to that question. There's 2 things I need to say first. One, you glossed over it, and you're far too humble to say. You received the Laudato Si Challenge Impact Award from the Vatican, which is a very high honor. One person, I think 2 people in the history of our foundation received it from the Holy See, and you were one of them, Jeff. And you received it from Father Josh at Cardinal Turkson's dicastery. Right. And that needs to be called out and mentioned, that you are such a force for good in capitalism. And you were recognized by the Holy See for it.
Thank you.
And Frank, listening to you talk, you're the co-founder everyone dreams of. You've got my blind side. And I think if you're starting a company, you've got to have a co-founder who you've been through hell with. And we have. And so I just wanted to call that out before I continue. Born in the Bay Area, a very, very good childhood, loved, close with my parents, grew up to, I went to school back east in Pennsylvania, became a lifeguard in Avalon, New Jersey, and have sort of embraced serendipity. I became a professional triathlete in my 20s, took on a media career, was this fitness expert at CBS News, wrote a number of books, and sort of followed my heart and my passion rather than having a set course. And I think it's those things that led us to, when Vivian started this lemonade stand and said, Dad, I want to bottle the lemonade. I was like, I know nothing about the beverage business, but we're going to do this. And we piled in all of our life savings and we bottled the lemonade, and that took us to the Vatican and meeting you and meeting Frank. And so I think my life's been one of just embracing serendipity and being willing to take risks and fail in the pursuit of something that we believed in and something that was good. So that's my life story, JC.
And, as you called, right, Frank laughs because we know that's it's a shortcut to the life story. There's a lot more in there. But I'll call you out because didn't you just recently won your set a world record for your age group was it at Kona?
We don't need to talk. We can talk about this.
Yeah, let's
Uh,
talk. Yeah, let's talk about it. Yeah.
It was at Ironman California, and people are bent on telling you what you can't do.
Yep.
And I think a lot of it was just, I want to answer the critics. No one my age had ever broken 9 hours for an Ironman, and at Ironman California, I broke it by 18 minutes. Had my family there when 8:42 set a world record, and that was sort of the beginning of if you really just let yourself dream. Pope Francis wrote, "Dare to dream." Just dare to dream. Everything we want's on the other side of fear. Just let that go and just run at it. You can do great things. And that was a day that I think was symbolic of that.
There's so much tied up in that, right?
Yeah.
Because look, in many ways, this is what this podcast is all about. That everything that you want is on the other side of fear, and being able to sort of say, I'm going to, a little bit of sacrifice, a little bit of pain for the things that I really, really want to happen in the world, right? The things I really want to make happen. And two things that you said for the entrepreneurs out there who are listening, that one, everything you want's on the other side of that, other side of that fear, and putting that fear aside. And the notion of having a co-founder that has your back, that you've been through things with.
100%.
Not only is it so so uplifting, right? That you need that, right? It's uplifting for you personally as a founder and a co-founder. You need someone who's going to be there. But we always talk about this is that we see a lot of solo founders, and I think that this is. I think it's endemic, and we spend a lot of time supporting underrepresented founders and female founders, and it's more prevalent to drove solo founders there, just because there's so many people who have been beat down that you can't get on the other side of the fear. You can't, you can't do this, right? So even those who are in those communities who want to rise up to the next level, they find it difficult to find anyone to come along with them. And we appreciate that, right? And so we recognize that, and at the same time, we still hold them accountable, because oftentimes I hear myself saying, I've said it a million times, you want me to invest in you, you want me to support you, and you can't get one other person to agree with this idea. You can't get one other person to support you. Sometimes I think that there's fear for those founders, right? That they're afraid to go out on a limb and say, I'm going to do something different. What do you think about that?
Well, I just want to say, Jeff, and I'm not lavishing undue praise, but you are a first mover, and the new needs friends, and it cannot be underestimated how important investors like you are. Frank and I lived it. It was December 2023. The holidays were coming up, and you said, I'm in. I believe in you. And sometimes all it takes is one person to believe so that you can put that fear aside and go. Because everyone wants to be part of, now that MAXIOM's successful, I'm getting messages all over. Everyone wants to be part of it. We needed the first mover. You were a first mover. It's so important to
I can even go back. You were getting married, you were going on your honeymoon, and you still took time to dig in, so, I mean, you could have just like, guys, seriously, I got enough going on right now, but you didn't.
Don't remind my wife of that, Frank.
So there's that fear piece in those solo entrepreneurs, but when you have a Jeff Cherry behind you, you can do anything. And I just want to speak to those solo entrepreneurs is having an investor like you, Jeff, is everything early on.
Well, in fact, if you think about it, I was the second mover because Frank was actually the first mover. Right?
Frank was the first mover.
Because, you had to go to Frank and say, I'm going to do this crazy thing. And Frank's like,
And he did.
Yeah. And what made you say yes, Frank?
So it was November 9th, right, of that year, and he had set his record and everything, and people were coming out of the woodwork and, rep my product, do this, do that, and it was sort of of course, people had been coming after him for years, but in a different way, and everybody that came to him was just subpar and substandard, and it was like, rep my sugary drink and, do all this stuff and send people down the wrong rabbit hole. And that is the opposite of the authenticity that this guy lives. And so none of it made sense to him. And so he just came to me and said, "What if?" And that's, that's sort of how we start a lot of our conversations. What if?
Mm.
And from the what if, it made sense. What if we did this? And we couldn't articulate it. And maybe we'll get to this later on, but you have talked with us about some, pattern breakers and these sorts of things since that day. But we were talking about, this is the time because of these things. We didn't really articulate it the way that you did 6 months ago, but we were looking at it going, there's no way to walk away from this. And what if we did this? And it was just like, let's burn the boats. And this is the time to do it. No way going back. And we haven't strayed from that. We don't have 1 foot in, 1 foot out looking, just checking it out. We're all in, or we're not starting this at all.
Yeah,
And it just made sense.
No question, you guys are both all in. Eric, talk a little bit about what was the catalyst for, and then we'll describe what MAXIOM is. But what was it? I mean, part of that world record was the catalyst, if I remember correctly, right? For MAXIOM. Talk about that a little bit, because there's this idea that comes up in pattern breakers, is that you have to be living in the future in some way, right? In order to identify those breakthrough those breakthrough opportunities. And as you said, no one had ever done it before. So you were living in the future, right? But so talk about how you did that, and how that was a catalyst to start this company.
Well, this is a message for all the entrepreneurs out there. I have so much admiration for people who are willing to just take that leap and put all the rules aside and break the rules. Jeff, in our Conscious Ventures Bootcamp, you nailed the tagline for our company, which was, you don't even remember, but you said, "Inside each of us is the blueprint for the best of us." I have always believed that. It's what draws me to the sport of Ironman. Watching these everyday heroes cross the line of an Ironman, and they light up at the finish to say, "I'm capable of this." Like, it makes me emotional to think about. And we don't get those opportunities in our daily lives to feel truly heroic. So I set out to show people what's possible when you are intentional and you look at the data and you don't look at the fads, and you measure your performance. And I unlocked something that hadn't been done before. And I thought to myself, the health and fitness industry is a mess. I mean, since the 50s, people have been using those flab away, those fat belts, and we've been chasing fads. And America is just in suffering as a result of all of this faddish, trend-driven. And meanwhile, I see great things happening when you follow the data and you just look at the truth of your body. And I thought to myself, something needs to change here, right? If I can do this at 50, what can we do to bring some sanity to the entire space? And I think all great ideas are born out of a point of pain that you lived, and that you said, this can be done way better.
Yeah, so point of pain that you lived, follow the data, look at the truth of your body, and the inflection point, right? If we go back to the pattern breakers, and if the pattern breakers guys are out there listening, we've been reading the book. If you go back to pattern breakers, it's that we were at a point where we are at a point now where it's more, you couldn't have built this.
That's right.
5 years ago.
That's right.
Because we hadn't seen the technological inflections, and more are coming. We're living in the future. More are coming. We talked about that one company that we didn't invest in, but we really like, that's creating wearables that measure cortisol through the skin. Right? Mm-hmm. There are things that didn't exist, so you couldn't follow the data like you can now.
Right.
But people weren't living in that future that you were living in, right? That 8 hours and 48 2-minute future. right?
Jeff Cherry,
They
you nailed it.
weren't living in that future
Yeah.
that you were living in. And then once you got there thinking, okay, there's got to be a way for me to help other people do this. This notion that inside each of us is a blueprint of the best of us. We've, in some ways, if you're an athlete, you've been being told that, but you haven't been told it in a, my friend Steve Polo always talks about a slice of life versus a slice of death. We've been beat on the slice of death. Get up, work harder, don't be lazy, But this notion that it's already in you.
Yeah.
Right. Now we've been told, how do you access that? And I think the thing I love about MAXIOM is that you're like, no. We can access that. We just give you the data, and then we'll tell you what to do with the data. So talk a little bit tell us about the company. Tell us about MAXIOM, what it is, and what you're trying to do.
MAXIOM is a human optimization company that leverages wearable data and next generation artificial intelligence to bring out your best. Right. And it is a classic pattern breaking company, because you're right. We are at this wave of remarkable artificial intelligence with hundreds of billions of dollars pouring into this space. And then you've got the ubiquity of wearable data. Everyone's got a wearable. You bring these two things together to say, you wake up in the morning and it says, Jeff, I've monitored your sleep. I see all of your data. This is what I recommend you do today. And the AI is trained only on peer-reviewed science. So you're getting a purely data-driven smart coach to say, Jeff Cherry, I see you, your unique biology, your unique goals. Here's what is the best thing for you to do today. And it's just taking off. People, I think that the best way to predict the future is to build it. Peter Drucker said that. This is where things are headed. People will move more and more towards precision guidance. You see it in medicine. Precision medicine is saving people's lives. We need to apply that to the health and fitness space.
And so tell us a little bit, how's it going?
Ugh. I mean, Frank, please, I will just say that you dream about this. You dream about everywhere you look is another win and another piece of momentum. But Frank.
Well, we hit a point a while ago. You get your friends and family on it, and they're using the platform, and then somebody new comes in, and you say you ping everybody and say, hey, so who's Bob Smith's friend? And they say, I don't know. So we've gone to the point of not knowing everybody on the platform by a long shot, right? And all of a sudden you get more and more people from Australia and Norway, and you're like, wait a minute, this has really gone way beyond friends and family, and into the thousands of users on it, and it's just every day you get into the details, and you see the wins, you see the hurdles you've got to get over, but it's creating boundless energy for us.
Yeah.
Because it's not a slog, and we're seeing the results. It's not done yet. We're never satisfied. We still have things to do and improve every day, but we've got a team that is executing, fast. We put things together, and it is remarkable how quick our development team, we're basically developing 24 hours a day between our groups around the world. We've got a design team that is like obsessive about removing every pixel. And you're like, wow, this is a great group to work with. And, we're in revenue, we've got, users, and again, a lot to do, a lot of improvement, but we are rapidly getting to the point of that tipping point where people have written about, where it's just viral.
And I can't say enough about the absolute, for every founder listening, please, if you take one thing away from this, take this away. Great people make great companies. You have got to find great people. That means investors. You can't fire your investors. Your team, the people you surround yourself with. If you have very talented, very mission-driven people who are capable, who have love in their hearts, there's nothing that can stop you. Companies die from suicide, not homicide, right? So this is the first time in my career after having run 6 companies where I love every single person involved in this company. It is a perfect storm of great people driving this business forward, and it's a joy. Sam Altman says when you have that, you have infinite energy. Startups are hard when they're not going well, but when they're going well, you can put in a 14-hour day and not feel it, right? So, and that comes down to the people you choose to work with.
And we've been very good about, people have told us, look, you need 50 people, and like, we don't.
No.
We just need the right people, and we've gone through hundreds and hundreds of people who want to work with us before we bring somebody on, and there've been 1 or 2 people that were great, but eventually they petered out and didn't have the energy, and we were quick to make changes. But that's been rare. But we just have not believed in staffing up 50 people just to have, we can say 50 people, and it's been really good to keep the group small and mighty, and again, executing very, very quickly and well.
Yeah, I want to, because as I like to stay on point with the theme of the show, I want to challenge something that you said, Eric, or we'll reframe it a little bit. Startups are hard, but when you have the right people, you have infinite energy, right?
Yeah.
The issue is, it's always hard. Even when things are going great, it's hard.
That is true.
But things don't go great all the time, right? Most of the time, things are not going great. Right?
That is for sure.
And to me, what you guys have been able to build is, that's when you need the group around you to give you energy to get up in the morning. When, like, today's going to be a slog. Yeah. It's just going to be one of those days in the startup and building a business. It just is. It's not that, it's just how it is, right? Something's gone, we know something has gone wrong. Something's about to go wrong. We didn't do something we said we're going to do. Someone else didn't do what they said they were going to do for us. It's going to be one of those days, right? Yes. And, on Sunday night, when we get to Sunday scaries, and we're trying to get away from the Sunday scaries, how do we get away from the Sunday scaries? We get away from the Sunday scaries by saying, yep, tomorrow's going to be a tough day, but I am surrounded by some of the greatest people. I love them, they love me, and we're just going to get after it, right?
Yeah.
So, when we invested, we said, we'll do this, but you got to go through this 2-day boot camp thing. And we've told everyone, and we'll talk about that in a minute. We tell everyone that we invest in outside of the accelerator, and for some people it's like pulling teeth, and then for other people they're like, yeah, bring it on, let's make it happen. You guys were definitely in that second camp. Why was that?
Number one, we believe in you. Number two, this is not our first rodeo. We know how hard this is. Steve Jobs said starting a company is the hardest thing a person will do, and it is true. Elon Musk said being the CEO of a company or even an entrepreneur is like eating glass and staring into the abyss. Staring into the abyss part meaning your company can die at any moment. Eating glass meaning you're always dealing with the most difficult parts of running the company. And it is not for the faint of heart. And you have to know that going in, and you have to be a missionary versus a mercenary. I promise you, if you're doing it for the money, it'll get to a point where you say it's not worth it. But if you're doing it because you truly believe in it, and you burn the boats, and you love the people around you, and you imagine the end user logging into Max and saying, this is changing my life, you get out of bed and you push through the challenges. But make no mistake, I mean, JC, there was a recent event that blew a cannonball-sized hole through my chest. And I called you. And it was terrifying. And I didn't know how we would get through that moment. But we got through that moment. You said just deal with what's in front of you. What's the next step? And that's the Ironman ethos. When you can't take another step, take another step. So it's hard, but you have the right people around you, and you can get through it. You just have to keep pushing.
Well, it's hard. Going back to something you said earlier, Jeff, I can't imagine not having a co-founder to talk to. Because when it gets really, really, really hard, you've got your wife, but you can't go and talk to them. And so, Eric, he's ultra communicative. And,
Yeah.
and then there's times when all of a sudden it just comes down to the conversation where he's going with a group of people, and then all of a sudden something will come just to me. And I just know, okay, he's done, or we've got to talk this through, but I just can't even imagine not having that other person to be a sounding board and just who understands that eating glass you're talking about, Eric. So the solo founder concept is just frightening to me.
Yeah, it is. And like I said, we have to balance that. Some people, don't have those networks, and some people do, and then we can provide some of that for them.
Right.
But this thing about being ultra communicative, Eric, and you really are ultra. I mean, like messages every day, all day, Medium posts. But you know what the benefit of that is? I mean, one benefit, it's hard work, right? It's hard to stay on top of those communications. I know it's hard for me, right? It's hard for all of us. But then, and this is another thing for, if there are entrepreneurs who are listening to this, when you call and say, hey, I got a problem. This thing just happened and it's blown a hole in my chest and I'm not sure what to do about it, right? Well, we're going to respond because you've been keeping in touch with us. When we haven't heard from somebody and then they say, hey, this is an emergency, I need to talk to you right away. We're not quite as enthusiastic about setting things aside to talk to that person, to say, okay, well, let's put everything down, because when we need, this is a two-way street. We need information from you, and you need help from us. When we get the information from you, it's easier for us to, to be there to give you the help, right? And if that's one thing, I've said this to my partners, Joe Vallis and John Key. I wish that, we need to have Eric sort of train the rest of our portfolio on how to communicate, because it's an amazing thing. I feel that I understand what's going on, right?
Yeah. I got that advice from Biz Stone, the co-founder of Twitter, who was the chairman of my board in a previous company, and he said just over communicate. It'll drive people crazy sometimes, but it builds trust, because in the absence of communication, what fills that void is thoughts creep in.
Fear.
Exactly, Frank. Fear creeps in, and you have a distributed team. You've got investors and stakeholders. Just say what's going on. Yep. Keep them updated on things, so that when that happened, Jeff, and I called you, you were right up to speed, and we solved that issue within 10 days. So, I encourage founders to just communicate. It's really, really important.
Let's take a little bit of a detour from that. What's keeping you guys up at night right now? What's top of mind for you, whether it be in the business or in life or whatever?
Yeah, Frank.
So right now we go back and forth with that decision to sprint toward growth or sprint toward revenue. Right? We're in revenue, and of course that's great, but do we put every effort and every decision toward bringing on 30,000 people, some of whom are going to be on the program in the free plan, or do we do everything that we're going to do to get them onto a revenue generating plan? So we go back and forth between philosophically that, because that has a lot to do with the direction and the hours and what you do. So that's something that we're going through routinely, as far as keeping us up at night, or the decisions that we make. Half an hour before we started this conversation, that was the topic with our team this morning. And opinions vary, but you've given us some sage advice, as has John recently. You run the meeting a few weeks back, and so, but that's what we are attacking right now, is that concept. And it keeps, for me as the operations guy, that keeps me up to, all right, what do we do and how do we do it, and to best serve our investors, the company, our users, and all that.
Yeah. What about you?
Every entrepreneur feels that burden, JC. There's a lot on the line.
Yeah.
And you take outside capital and you've got families counting on you. And our mission at MAXIOM is to inspire and empower the full potential of 1 billion people. That is a mission you want to achieve. So it keeps me awake that what's on the line for success, but also failure. So founders should be driven by a healthy amount of that, pushing from behind and also pulling towards success, right? But that's what keeps me awake now is I actually have line of sight on being able to apply this technology globally to uplift 1 billion people. I truly believe and see that happening now. And so what keeps me awake is not getting there, right? It is terrifying, the idea that we won't get there, but that actually motivates.
Yeah. How are you guys experiencing sort of the market turmoil that we're seeing right now? And some of this was, probably impactful in that, with an investor that bowed out, that might have been impactful there. But how are you guys experiencing the sort of market turmoil? We're in tech, so I'm not sure that the tariffs themselves have any impact on you, but just the sort of the market turmoil, the tariffs, the political, environment that we find ourselves in. How are you guys experiencing that, both as individuals, as family people, but also as business people?
So for me, on our side, we don't talk about it as much because the heart and soul really of what we do is the technology, but we do have physical products. Right, we have our supplement products, we have our fueling products for the elite athlete, and so I'm continually looking at supply chain issues and cost issues and these sorts of things, and making sure that we have enough product in line and that sort of thing. And a lot of it comes from the U.S., but some of it comes from abroad, and so those are some of the issues. So we don't. It's just not what we talk about a lot. But it is in my world within our MAXIOM family to deal with some of those companies and those realities for the physical product. So it's there. It's just not the Max, and the technology is what we lead with. But it affects us for sure. And so I'm continually working with suppliers, making sure that the price points are right. And we have and we will build, as part of our engine, the machine learning that will streamline all those processes. So that's in our development path.
Eric, what about the way? I mean, it seems that the nature of politics right now is impacting everybody, in one way, shape, or form. How are you experiencing that right now? And what does it mean in terms of how you're thinking about operating MAXIOM?
I think whether you're talking about being a leader or an athlete or a husband or a father is a matter of focus. Remember when Tiger Woods would line up for a putt and just do this?
Yeah.
And block out all the distractions? There is so much noise.
The rim of his hat, yeah.
It was beautiful, and he would lock out everything. Entrepreneurs have got to, there's so much noise and so much talk about division and all of this. Yes, that is true, but you have a job to do. And so this matter of just sort of blocking out the noise and focusing on the signal is so important. You have a limited amount of bandwidth as an entrepreneur. So yes, Jeff, these things exist, but it's more important than ever as a leader to stay focused. And that's where we are. And we're blessed, quite honestly. Bill Gross talks about it. Timing is one of the most important factors of a startup success. We are being pushed by this wave of AI, and so we're experiencing a big push from behind, which is definitely a blessing.
Yeah, I want to talk about this one last thing before we close up, and really appreciate you guys joining. I know it's a little early out there on the West Coast, but Eric, you always it's funny because I've experienced this personally. When people first meet you, they're like, maybe it's all smoke and mirrors. Maybe it's all fish oil, because nobody really cares that much. Nobody really does.
I appreciate the honesty, Jeff.
I'm just telling you things that I've heard.
Yeah, of course, of course.
But I know you to be that, that really caring and centered and authentic person. I wonder where that came from.
Just meet my wife, and you'll know why. We have a very close, very loving family. And if it weren't for that woman, like Denzel Washington said, I'd just be dead by now. She holds me up, and there's so much love in our family. And it comes from that place, Jeff. I don't, so it is an authentic source of unending love that I bring to my work and my friendships, and it is very real. And all you need to know is my wife to understand that. But yeah, I get that.
You don't turn that off when you open the door to the office in the morning, do you?
No, I really have come to believe that love is the most powerful force there is. It is the thing that will get you in and over every hurdle in your company. You've got to tap. It is not a Pollyannish concept. If you love the people around you and you love your company and you love what you're doing in the world, it will pull you over every obstacle. And I love you, Jeff, and I love you, Frank, and I love the people on our team. And so when that happened to us 2 weeks ago, it was this first moment of, the cannonball through the chest, and then I got right back to what I'm doing here, and that is I love what we're doing.
Well, guys, we're gonna nearly end on that point.
Comes a trick question.
I really appreciate. It's not really a trick question, but I like to see everyone's reaction when I give it to them at the end.
I bridge it back to love.
Yeah, I really appreciate you guys joining me today. I think this is going to be a fantastic episode for entrepreneurs to listen to. I hope that they take lots of what you said, particularly the end there, Eric, to heart. That people say this is not personal; it's just business. No. It's all personal. It is all personal, right? So I hope that people take that to heart. So last question. And I'll split it up. I'll give you 3 answers, Eric, and you get 3 answers, Frank. You are stranded on a desert island, and you only can have 3 pieces of music. It could be 3 albums, or it could be 3 songs. What are they going to be? We're compiling this all. We're gonna put it. We have a Spotify channel we're putting out with the Desert Island discs. So you have 3
right,
pieces
Frank.
of music.
Me first?
Yeah, you go
I
first.
need time to think.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to have the Hamilton musical album.
Okay.
So that's coming with me for sure. That's my
Soundtrack from Hamilton. That's good.
Soundtrack
See,
from
people should say albums because the albums you get more songs. All right. Soundtrack from Hamilton.
That's right. 2 more.
Yeah.
I'm going to pull in Southern Cross from Crosby, Stills, Nash.
Okay. Speaking
So
of the
my
beginning.
roots go way back, and they did a lot of work on the ocean years ago, and so that takes me back to there. And then it's just the silliest song, but it's a lullaby that we used to sing to our kids, and it's just they're grown now, they're 23, and but it still comes up on their birthdays and such every year. So there's a little lullaby song that grounds me with my children.
All right. You want to sing some of it, do you? No, that's all right. You don't have to.
Dude, no.
Okay. All right, E, your turn.
I don't want to follow the lullaby. How am I going to top that?
He didn't even tell us what the lullaby is.
All right. I'm going to have to bring Stevie Nicks. She sings a song called Landslide that if you ever hear it, it will shred your soul, and it's what reminds me of the love I have for my family.
Okay.
I'd have to bring a good DJ in there because I'm going to need to work out on the island and just stay in shape. So I'm going to bring Fisher. And Fisher, I'm looking at you if you're listening to the podcast because I want to work with Fisher. And I suppose the last one would probably be just the Beatles, just to be able to sit with them and listen and live out my days on the island. in a spirit of love. That's what I'm going with, JC.
Would any particular be White Album? What Beatles?
Oh yeah, for sure.
White
Like
Album.
Blackbird. Yeah,
White
yeah.
Album. All right.
And I might even bring it all the way back full circle on the show and add the song you started out with,
Well,
'cause that's powerful stuff.
Speaking of, thank guys.
There we go.
It's been awesome.
Jeff, let us know how we can be of service to you, please. And you know, it's important to us.
I will keep that in mind, but I want to say thank you guys for joining us today. A special day. Think about these 4 students in Kent State killed just for exercising their rights. We gotta remember those sorts of things and keep moving forward. And I get to move forward with guys like you two, so it's a pleasure. This has been Capitalism Remix. Thanks for listening, and we will talk to you next week. Peace.